We've been talking about being the favorite, right? And this causes so much controversy for some people, especially the ego analytical type of people that go, "How is that possible when God, you can't? We can't all be His favorite, You can't be God's favorite because then that means that they're not, And so we've been talking about it, and I want to ask, how many of you noticed the common and the favorite doors at the entrance? Okay, so. Very important. Which door did you feel like crossing? I don't know which one did you cross through. Who crossed through the common one? Okay, we won't embarrass you. Who crossed through the favorite one? Yeah, that's good. That means that you're getting it. This is the third and last week. After this, I'm done talking about this stuff for a while. So if you haven't heard it, just go back to Facebook or the church app and listen to the first two, but I think it is so important, and I'll tell you why. I have seen crazy testimonies in my personal life this week, just from being more aware of it. I was telling Kara, every time I think about it, and I tell God, I'm your favorite. Like, I really am your favorite. Like, it brings a smile to my face. It makes me go like, man, thank you. Like, gosh, Like, that's what my son does to me. Like, a lot of times I'll look at Benjamin over there, and he's like, he knows he's loved. He knows he's my favorite son, right? A lot easier when you have only one son and 4 daughters, right? But he knows it. And that's how I feel with God. I'm like, God, I'm your favorite, and that's awesome. And what we've been learning is that being God's favorite doesn't mean that the person next to you is not, But you need to learn this for yourself, that you are it. You are it. You're God's favorite. And okay, so what happens is we said that knowing that God, being God's favorite, knowing that we are God's favorite affects how we relate to Him, right? It affects how we relate to God, how much more we want to be close, because you want to be close to those who celebrate you, right? Not those who tolerate you. You avoid those who tolerate you, but you want to be around and close to those who celebrate you. So when you know that you're God's favorite, it affects the way you relate to Him. It affects the way that you talk to Him. It affects the way that you come close to Him. Does that make sense? All right, so you have to listen last week about Miss Veronica and Miss Andy, at school. But what I want to say is, this week, I've been exercising this and just like being more conscious about it. Like in the morning when I wake up, I'm like, here I am. Good morning, your favorite one, Before I go to bed at night during the day, I'm like, I face something or something comes my way. I go, God, I'm your favorite. So I'm expecting something with a lot of favors going to happen here, right? So I experienced it this week, like 3 different times, that noticeable times. And I'm like, this thing is good and it works. And so I'll tell you one of those times, this is probably the most embarrassing one of all of them, but I'll tell you anyways, because y'all know already that I am nowhere close to perfect, and I don't ever expect you to expect that from me, but you come to encounter God, not me, so we're good there. So here's what happened. I got in a car accident about a month ago, in January, right? I started the year totaling the van. So I totaled our van, and, it was just a split-second distraction. I'm talking to my son in the back, and they just stopped in the middle of the freeway, and I ran in the back of this pickup truck at about 40 miles an hour, and our hood just went, all the airbags went off. So they totaled the vehicle, and we were on the side of the road. There was nobody injured, not me, not my son, not the person in front. Super nice guy. Officer came, pulled up. Benjamin's like playing with the officer, like, oh, I like your gun. My daddy has one. And I'm like, yeah, not here, not now, And, so like it was a very calm situation. He was having fun running in the desert while the officer's writing me a ticket because, even if there's no other violation, you get a ticket if you have an accident for, they call it failure to handle your vehicle or something like that, right? So I get a ticket, and I go home, and I have you have your 30 days for a citation, and then you go in, and then you either, you could be like, no, it wasn't my fault, and argue, or you could just pay it. Or in my case, you can go to school, traffic school. If you haven't had one in like 12 months, you go to traffic school, and then they waive the points, and they waive the ticket, and it doesn't affect your insurance and all this good stuff. So I'm like, I'm going to school, right? I'm going to school. Well, next thing you know, I get really busy. I go to Mexico City for that pastor's conference, come back, I get busy. I do a wedding. I do other kinds of things, just get really busy. In the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember the date was like February 24th. I'm like, I better get on that. And then it's completely out of my mind. I normally set reminders. I didn't set a reminder this time. And a friend comes this week, and he's telling me on Tuesday night, he's like, oh my goodness, I got a ticket. And I'm like, my ticket, right? It's February, was it this week, February 20th, something like that. And it just, like, my heart just dropped. Like, I think I had to, like, pick it back up and be like, I'm like, my ticket. And I remembered, and I'm like, I think I still have till the 20th. So I come home, and I can't find my paperwork. It's gone, right? So here's where my excuses come from. I think somebody cleaned up my office. And I'm just joking. Not even going to go there, right? I can't find my ticket. I had it in my briefcase. I think I took it out when I went to Mexico City, and I can't find my paperwork anywhere, and I'm just panicking. So after I turn upside down the house and everything, I find it, and the court date was February 2nd. Exactly, right? Ooh. Yeah, it's bad, okay? I know. So I'm in panic. That's never happened to me before. And I'm like, what am I? Like my mind starts racing, right? And I'm sure some of you can identify with this. I'm like, my mind starts racing like, my license is probably revoked. There's probably a warrant for my arrest. They might knock on my door right now and take me. Like, I missed a court date. I did nothing. I just, like, ignored it. And I'm like, this is bad. So I go online and I look up the complaint and everything, and, and the status thing. I've never seen one of these pages before. It just says status, nothing. And I'm like, they probably don't want me to know so I don't hide or something, Like, I don't know what's going on. And I go, and I'm like, okay, it's late at night, so I have to call in the morning. But just so you know, like, I'm doing all this in front of Kara. She has no clue because I'm playing it so cool. Like, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's all good. I got it, right? Like, she doesn't even know how bad this is. But, you get good at why panic her, right? Because then it's double the panic. Why do I want double the panic? I'm going to take care of it in the morning. So in the morning, I call a Santan Justice Court, and I'm like, I said, lady, I think I'm in a lot of trouble, and I need somebody to help me with this thing because I'm just like, and in the morning, I'm like, okay, just remember, you're God's favorite. You're God's favorite. So, I know this is like not a way to get out of a ticket at all, but I'm like, okay, God, please help me, like, help me. And she's like, oh, she looks it up, and she comes back, and she goes, I don't know. It doesn't look like they've done anything with this. I'm like, I don't know. What does that mean? She's like, let me put you on hold. I said, listen, I was trying to go to school. Now I don't know if there's fines and fines upon fines for, like, being late. Like, you know how sometimes fines accrue, like, every day that you don't do something, it's like more and more. So I'm thinking this is going to be like $1,000 now. I'm probably punished. I don't have a chance to go to school. I now have more points on my, my thing. Now I'm like, I got other things for avoiding the law and, like, not showing up and leaving the judge standing. I'm like, so she has me on hold for like 3 minutes, and I'm like, okay, God. And she comes back, and she's like, okay, so we're going to give you an extension so you can go to school. You have till April 15th. I'm like, wait, so you mean I can actually still do the school thing? It's like, yeah. And I'm like, and you give me an extension till April, right? This happened in January. I missed it by a month, and you're giving me 2 more months to do it. Like, I didn't say that verbatim because I didn't want to talk her out of it, right? But she's like, yeah, you have till April. Just, put in a new date that is due in April when you go do your school, and you'll be fine. There's no fees, nothing. I'm like, thank you. God bless you. Can I pray with you? Anything, And that was it. And I was like, God, I I am so your favorite. Like, I am so your favorite. Like, there's no other way this happens. This is not like, So, yeah, I know, right? So thank God. I'm telling you, when you know you're his favorite, right? And you act, think, talk, and behave like it, that's what you're going to attract. Because that's what God's going to pour his favors. Like, he knows he's my favorite, right? So, go listen to the other 2 weeks. And today, let's go to Luke chapter 15. And don't judge me based on that story, okay? I am a good person. And I abide by the law. I am not an outlaw. And I want us to start reading Luke chapter 15. So one of the things that we talked about the first week we started this series is we said we have different identities. We're one person, one personality, but we have different identities relationally based on who you're with, right? So like I am a father, but I'm also a son. That's two identities, right? Two different people. You relate different to other people. So to some people here at church, I'm their pastor, and some of their friend too, and some I'm also their boss, right? And to some, I'm also their dad, And to another one, I'm her husband, right? And her boss. Just kidding, just the husband. And her employee. Right? But we have different identities with different people depending on how we relate to them. So it's the same thing with God. And I'm going to get a little more into it as we go, but one of the things we need to realize is a lot of time religion has said, no, you're a servant of God, and that's it, right? Oh, no, you're a child of God. Okay, that's a little better, right? Oh, you're a friend of God. Oh, no, we're not friends with God. Like, that's heresy right there. And it's like, some people are confused. They're like, is it friends, servants, or children? Or which one is it, right? Are we co-laborers? Are we partners? Are we a little less than him or nothing like him? Or which one is it, right? And I want to bring this into our hearts so that we're more at ease with the things that we hear sometimes, because I want to say that we are servants, but we're children also. It's not, sometimes we think this has to be or, one or the other, but a lot of times it's and. It's this one and this one. Just like I'm not just a husband, but I'm also a father. It's not either or, I'm both, right? So with God, we serve him, but there's a higher reality, which is a higher truth, which is that we are his children, okay? It's like of a higher level of truth. Like, yes, we serve him, but we are his children, which kind of trumps the servant part, right? Like if it came to both of them, it's like you're his son above everything. And then I'm also his friend, or can be his friend. How do you relate to him, right? So it's not like one or the other. I believe we can be all these things with God. I believe I serve him, right? But I'm also his son, but I'm also his friend, and I want to be his intimate friend, and I want to be his partner, and I want to co-labor with him and do things together with him. Does that make sense? So we might have a few different identities, and you might have only known God as one thing so far, but he wants you to relate with him in so many more levels than you have so far, right? It's the same way that he doesn't want to just be your savior. He wants to be your father, your provider, your healer, your peace, your joy. He wants to be everything to you. Well, you need to relate to him in more than just one level. Does that make sense? So, let's read Luke 15, and I'm going to start with verse 11. I'm reading out of the Passion Translation. I told you guys you can all read out of the Passion Translation now also because it's on the Bible app as one of the versions. So that's an awesome treat. It says, then Jesus said, once there was a father with two sons. The younger son came to his father and said, Father, don't you think it's time to give me the share of your estate that belongs to me? So the father went ahead and distributed among the two sons their inheritance. Okay, first of all, he did it with both of them, not just one. He gave them both their inheritance. Okay, Then it says, shortly afterward, the younger son packed up all his belongings and traveled off to see the world. He went to Vegas to spend it all. I'm just kidding. Doesn't say that, but pretty much. It says he journeyed to a far-off land where he soon wasted all he was given in a binge of extravagant and reckless living. With everything spent and nothing left, he grew hungry, for there was a severe famine in the land. So he begged a farmer in that country to hire him. The farmer hired him and sent him out to feed the pigs. The son was so famished, he was willing to even eat the slop given to the pigs because no one would feed him a thing. Verse 17, humiliated, the son finally realized what he was doing, and he thought. That's smart. He had a thought. There are many workers at my father's house who have all the food they want with plenty to spare. They lack nothing. Why am I here dying of hunger, feeding these pigs and eating their slop? I want to go back home to my father's house, and I'll say to him, Father, I was wrong. I have sinned against you. I'll never be worthy to be called your son. Please, just treat me like one of your employees. Right? This is servant, employee, slave mentality. He's not trying to identify as a son anymore. He knew he was one at one point, but now he's just trying to be a servant. Why? Because he was bad. Say with me, he was bad, right? He was a bad boy. He wasted all he had. He was disobedient, reckless living, all this stuff. He had a past. He had a bad life behind him. He had sinned. Now he had repented because he thought and changed the way he thought. And it's like, I'm leaving these pigs. I'm becoming an employee to my father. Now, how many people have a past and they're condemned and ashamed by it because the devil is the one who condemns us, right? He's the one who's continually accusing, and he's like, you're terrible, you did these really bad things, you're a sinner, you barely, if you make it to heaven, you'll be lucky, right? And then they come into church and they come in with that exact same mentality, like, I'm a really bad person, but if I could only just be your servant. And they stay there their whole walk, their whole Christian walk, and they never go on to a higher truth or reality that is being a son and a daughter, right? So they stay like servants because that's all they think they can get. That's all they think they deserve. Maybe I can be a servant of God. Maybe I can be a slave or an employee, but, heaven forbid I'd be a son or a friend. That's heresy, right? Because why? Because behind that thought and that mentality, there's condemnation. There's accusing. There's like, you're not enough. You're not worthy. It's based upon what he did. But the father, obviously, we know it's different, right? He receives them differently. He says, verse 20, it says, so the young son set off for home. From a long distance away, his father saw him coming dressed as a beggar, and great compassion swelled up in his heart, for his son who was returning home. So the father raced out to meet him. He swept him up in his arms, hugged him dearly, and kissed him over and over with tender love. That's how the father receives us. That's how he receives us every day. That's not tolerating, that's celebrating. See, that's not a father who's like, here it comes. All right, he's going to hear it. He's going to have, I'm going to give it to him. He better not ask me for a thing. That's not at all his attitude. That's not at all his heart or the way he's thinking, but it's that of a father is full of grace. Then the son said, Father, I was wrong. I have sinned against you. I could never deserve to be called your son. Just let me be. And the father interrupts him and says, Son, you're home now. See, that's all he cares about. You're home now. You're home now. Turning to his servants, the father said, Quick, bring me the best robe, my very own robe, and I will place it on his shoulders. Bring the ring, the seal of sonship. The ring is the seal of sonship, and I will put it on his finger. And bring out the best shoes you can find for my son. Let's prepare a great feast and celebrate. For this beloved son of mine was once dead, but now he's alive again. Once he was lost, but now he is found. And everyone celebrated with overflowing joy. Now, it is not what we would ever think that God would be like if we were just going off of religion, right? Because that son didn't earn anything. He didn't pay punishment. He didn't pay a penitence. He wasn't grounded for a while. He didn't have to earn his way back up to have the ceremonial feast of welcoming. Like, he didn't have to do any of those things. What did he do? He came home. He came home. That's all that God wants to do, is come home to his arms, to be his son, his daughter again. So the son comes, he's home, he's celebrated, he puts a ring on him, which is his identity, the seal of sonship, right? Which is like, we read last week, he put in us a spirit that calls Abba Father. A spirit that inside of us says we are sons, we are daughters, we identify with him. He's our Father, our beloved Father. And then it says, bring out the best shoes you can find for my son. I love this part. Verse 24 says, for this beloved son of mine. See, last week we were reading some scriptures where he refers to us as his beloved children, his beloved son, his beloved daughter. And we said he wouldn't refer to that. He wouldn't refer to someone as a beloved child unless it was like his favorite, right? It's not just a child, it's my beloved child. So this is for us. And that's how the Father is with us. It says, verse 25. Now here's the other side of it. And follow me. 25 says, now the older son was working in the field when his brother returned. And as he approached the house, he heard the music of celebration and dancing. So he called over one of the servants and asked, what's going on? The servant replied, it's your younger brother. He's returned home and your father is throwing a party to celebrate his homecoming. The older son became really happy. Is that right? No. Became really angry and refused to go in and celebrate. What is causing this anger, this jealousy? What is causing this, this feeling? Why wouldn't he want his brother back home and celebrate it? So his father came out and pleaded with him, come and enjoy the feast with us. The son said, Father, listen, how many years have I been working like a slave for you? How was this son working for his father? Like a what? Like a slave. How did he relate to his father? Like a slave, like an employee, not as a favorite child. Okay? You would think, well, maybe he didn't treat him as a favorite child. That's not true, because he gave him his portion of the inheritance the same time his brother took his. It says, so the father pleaded with him, come and enjoy the feast with us. Verse 29 says, the son said, Father, listen, how many years have I been working like a slave for you, performing every duty you've asked as a faithful son? And I've never once disobeyed you. What is he pointing out to? He's pointing out to his performance, right? Everything that he's done, how he has earned it, how he has paid the price, how he should have these things because according to what he has done, he deserves it, right? So he's pointing to him, me. Look at what I've done. Look how I deserve it, okay? But you've never thrown a party for me because of my faithfulness. Never once have you even given me a goat that I could feast on and celebrate with my friends like he's doing now. But look at this son of yours. He comes back after wasting your wealth on prostitutes and reckless living, and here you are throwing a great feast to celebrate for him. And the father says, my son, you're always with me by my side. Everything I have is yours to enjoy. It's only right to celebrate like this and be overjoyed because this brother of yours was once dead and gone, but now he's back and with us again. He was lost and now he's found. So what is behind this brother's anger? I'll tell you, it's a spirit of poverty. Okay? Why is poverty? Because poverty mentality is not just has to do with finances. Okay? Poverty mentality has to do with lack thinking. Okay? So when you think lack, that has to do with poverty mentality. So this son is all wrapped up into his poverty mentality because he thinks that if the younger brother has the feast, he can't have one. He thinks limited resources. So he thinks that if the other one is getting a feast, he surely can't have a feast. He thinks if the other one is loved and celebrated that much, he can't be loved and celebrated that much. He thinks if the other one has the ring and the robe, then he can't have it either. But what's the answer of the Father? The Father says, you're wrong. All that is mine is yours, and you've always been next to me. What was the problem? The problem was in his mind and in his way of thinking, because he related to his father as a servant that was performing to earn something that was already his from the very beginning. Because why would you get an inheritance unless you're a child? Right? And he got an inheritance from the very moment. His brother is like, here's yours. The father's like, here's yours. You're staying home. Fine. Everything that's mine is yours. You can have a party anytime you want. Why didn't he have a party? Why didn't he feel celebrated? Because he didn't think of himself as a favorite child, as a favorite son. That's why it's so important that we know that we are his favorite son, his favorite daughter. Because unless you know it, you won't relate to him as it, and you will miss out on everything that is his, that has always been there. And the poverty mentality will kick in and will make you jealous of others. See, because that's what poverty mentality does. It tells you there's not enough for all of us. So you got to perform more. You got to do more. You got to be gooder. Right? So that you can have, so that you can do. You know, in church, ministry, and religion, you know, people get so funny when other people are anointed or when other people have a great revelation of the word, right? And they feel like insecure sometimes, like, oh, they got promoted. Oh, they got so much anointing. There's not enough for me, right? It's all been used on Benny Hinn now. It's all been used on, you know, on those guys. Like, there's not enough. And we think that God is limited by resources like we are humanly, right? But God is God. And a lot of times we end up with a God that has been made in our image and has our limits because we made God in our image instead of realizing that we're made in His image and He's a God that does not change. God's not limited by our resources. Go to John 15:5. I hope this is helping somebody. Especially those who still have a hard time thinking they're the favorite ones. Because you are the favorite one. Um, 15, and I'm going to read verse 5. Sticky fingers. It says, I am the sprouting vine and you are my branches. As you live in union with me as your source, fruitfulness will stream from within you, but when you live separated from me, you are powerless. Okay? I'm going to go to verse 9. It says, I love each of you. Okay, so that's talking about closeness with God. He wants us to be close to Him, attached to Him. It said, I love each of you with the same love that the Father loves me. Now, that is crazy. That alone right there, that's crazy. Jesus is saying, I love you with the same love the Father loves me. Who thinks Jesus is Father God's favorite? I think Jesus is Father God's favorite, right? Well, how crazy is this? Jesus is saying, right here in the Bible, okay, I love each of you with the same love that the Father loves me. No less, no more, just all of it. See, what do you get when you have infinite? It's like infinite, you know, like the infinite sign, like it's infinite, right? What do you have left when you take 1 billion off of that infinite? Thank you. And he is a nuclear biochemist. Like, he knows this stuff. Right? What do you have? You have infinite. And God is infinite. God's resources are infinite. His love is infinite. So when He pours out so much on me because I realize I'm His favorite more than ever, like, you should be excited and not jealous. You should be like, oh, dang it, I could have gotten that. No, you should be like, yes, I can get that too. Because why? Because His resources are infinite. We think, oh, man, you know, if that church down the road, they got someone to donate $1 million for their church building, and now they could build an orphanage too. Man, I wish that was us. What a bummer. I wish we knew that person that gave them the money. Like, that is such poverty, lack mentality, because that is showing to us that we are so attached to limited resources and limited mentality that says if they had it, we can't. And that shows who your provider is too. Because your provider is Him, and His resources are infinite. Who He uses, it doesn't matter. He could call somebody in Timbuktu and tell them, wire some money to this account over here. And, and they'll do it. Right? So when we think jealousy, when we think, oh, there's not enough for both of us, when we're in a church and we think, well, that's the pastor, so I can't teach. I can't be a pastor here. I need to go somewhere else to do my own thing because otherwise there's not enough room for me. It's like, no, you got to understand, there is room for you. People say this all the time, yeah, I'd like to serve here or there, but I just don't want to step on any toes. And I'm like, listen, we're not that kind of church. There's room for you. There's room for your gift. There's room for your dream. There's room for your passion because we are not competing. We're not competing because there's nothing to compete for. Because we're not performing to obtain or get somewhere. We are living a life out of a place that we already are the favorite child. We already have the blessing of the Lord. Do you know what I mean? There's room for all of us. Not just because it's a growing church, but because that's the culture, that's our heart. So it says He loves us with the same love. So we went from servants to children, and He wants us to be friends because, see, we have these many identities with God, like you can have with me, I could be your pastor, I could be your friend, and just as we serve God, we're also His sons, we're also His friends, co-labor. In heaven, we're going to be His neighbors too. We're His temple too. There's so many things that we are to God and that He is to us. Isn't it true that when you grow up and mature, you become more of a friend to your parents? Right? Because why? The relationship matures and grows. And that's kind of nice to have your children being your friends too, right? So it's the same with God. Not always want to stay as children. We started this series talking about maturity, and growth. Well, one of the places we want to get to is to be friends with God. You enjoy His company. You enjoy talking to Him. You enjoy opening a Bible, being like, what do you got? What do you want to tell me today? Oh, that is so good. Thank you. I needed that. It doesn't mean you stop being a son or a daughter or serving Him or collaborating with Him, but it just means you've grown to now, a mature place where you're friends of God. You're a friend of God. You can do things together. You want to go take over the world. You want to go, achieve these dreams and these desires that He has put in your heart. He put them there, so He wants to collaborate with you in them. God is not finite. He's infinite. He doesn't run out because someone else is His favorite or somebody else had resources, right? Because somebody else is so talented and so gifted or is so anointed or has so much revelation, sometimes we think, oh, that's all there is, But that's a poverty mentality. Let's not get caught up in the poverty mentality or lack mentality. God is infinite. You cannot exhaust His resources. You can't exhaust His resources. God does not compare you to anybody. And see, I think this might help some people understand and believe and write in their hearts that they are the favorite. Because the mentality that says God doesn't have favorites, I can't be His favorite, I'm sure somebody else is because they're better, that's performance-based, and that's lack mentality right there, okay? Because God is infinite. So if I think that God compares me to others, then I'm going to think that I'm not good enough. And you never will be, because there will be always somebody more talented, smarter, or stronger, or whatever, with more money, with more resources, right? So God doesn't compare me to anybody. It needs to be a truth that we write in our hearts. He doesn't compare me to anybody, and I am His favorite. You know why? Because you're unique. You're 100% unique. There's so many parts of a human body that is unique to that person. And there's how many? 7 billion people in this world? You're unique. You can be identified by your DNA. You're the only person that has those fingerprints. Your iris is unique. It has a print. Your retina has, like there's security measures that now do eye scans, right? And they're looking for that. Just like a fingerprint, your voice is unique. Nobody else has your voice. That's amazing. Like, how can God make 7 billion people, and I'll tell you real quick, actually, and 7.6 billion people, okay? And there's this website called worldometers.info. It's amazing, right? And you can see, like, the numbers going up in population like crazy and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, God just made, oh, there's more. There's more. Like another set of prints, another set of prints, another set of prints, another set of DNA that is completely different to all the other ones. Like, that is mind-blowing. That is mind-blowing. How can you do that? Completely different. You know that this part of your ear, like these lines and how, we think that they all look the same, kind of. Well, there's some that are different, right? But they're like, what happened to your ear? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, right? But this is unique. Like this thing, like this figure and whatever it is, it's unique. And yet, they all have a certain similarity, right? Like, there's no square ears, right? Or triangle ears, unless you're an elf, right? And yet, all 7.6 billion, well, actually more. Let me say that. That's a lot more because, see, when somebody goes to heaven, God doesn't have a new one that He can repeat now. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's 7.6 billion right now, but plus all the other ones that have passed, right? And they're all unique in DNA, in eye, retina, iris, in your ear form, in your fingerprints. Your tongue has a pattern that is unique also. Your teeth, right? They can identify people and they can identify bodies by their teeth. It's all unique. And when God made you, He said, that's good, right? That's good. Not one that God made was like, oh, well, I get to do another one. Like, there was none of those. God didn't make one that He was like, well, I'll try better next time. Like, all of them are good. All of them are unique. We are all unique among 7.6 billion people that are alive on planet Earth today. And we're all His favorites. Because there's only one you. There is only one me. And I'm His favorite one. There's not another one like me. Now, I'm learning to see that in my kids more and more. Like, they have different personalities, and their personalities come out differently sometimes, They're immature, and they're growing, and they're learning, and all this stuff. And it's immaturity that sometimes, how can I say it? Rubs us the wrong way, okay? Right? Because their person, their essence is amazing. Who God made them to be is amazing, right? So my kids' immaturity sometimes frustrates me, right? Or makes me want to pull my hair. But the thing is that God made them unique. And I need to learn that's my favorite Hannah. I don't have any other Hannahs, and she's my favorite Hannah. And she's unique, and I love how she is, right? That's my favorite kid and my favorite Benjamin, right? And if you can start seeing everyone around you like that way, there's not another Carlos. Wow. It's my favorite. Like, he really is my favorite. If I tell you you're my favorite, like, I'm honestly telling you really are my favorite because you're unique and you're amazing. And how God made you, and then maybe the spouse is looking like, yeah, you don't know all the defects, right? No, I don't know all the defects, but God sees us without that. Like, he doesn't ignore that there's areas of growth in our life. But he sees us how he created us, and he knows we're unique, and there's not another one like you. So you are his favorite because like that's the thing about collectors, right? Collectors love these items because there's not another one like that. It's a unique item. And what does that make that item? That makes it very what? Valuable, right? Incredibly valuable because there's only one of them. In the same way, you are incredibly valuable to God because there's only one of you. There's only one of you. There's no other. There never will be, there never has been, and never will be another one with your same set of prints, with your same tone of voice. You are God's favorite. You are God's favorite. Psalm 139. Let's go ahead and read Psalm 139, verse 1 through 4. Are you getting something? Are you receiving a revelation that is transforming your heart? I hope so. A lot of the problems that we have in our thinking is because we have made God in our image and we think that he has limits. We think that he thinks like us. We think that he is limited to human ability as we are. And that brings a lot of issues and frustration, which causes us to create religion. When we try to conform God to our human mindsets and our human ways of living, we create religion because we cannot explain how he can love us all with all of his love at the same time. That's because he's God, and that's where we go, okay, I can't understand it, I can only receive it and believe it in my heart. Psalms 139, verse 1 through 4, it says, Lord, you know everything there is to know about me. You perceive every movement of my heart and soul. And you understand my every thought before it even enters my mind. You're so intimately aware of me, Lord. You read my heart like an open book. And you know all the words I'm about to speak before I even start a sentence. You know every step I will take before my journey even begins. See, we know that God knows all things. We know that he knows every thought in our mind, everything that we feel in our heart. We know that, right? Because he's God. But do we volunteer those thoughts and do we volunteer that to him? Or does he have it just because he can't? Do you ever tell him the things that are in your heart? Well, but he already knows it. Sometimes we act like God is invading our privacy because he can. Like, we know he knows all things and we act like, yeah, again, well, what can I do? I can't hide it. He knows all things. Like, he's okay with that and it doesn't scare him, but do we voluntarily share and bring him those thoughts and those feelings to him, right? He knows everything about us, and still like that, he loves us. Still like that, we're his favorite. Still like that, we're unique. So there's nothing to hide from him, because the moment you're trying to hide something from God, the moment you're feeling condemned, you're back into that lack mentality. You're back into that poverty, performance-based thing that, I have to, like the older brother was thinking, like, I have to do better so that I can have, so that I can get, so that I can be. It's never God's heart. That's why he lets you know that he knows all things. And that even with that, he loves you, he accepts you, and you're his favorite. Yeah. Even with all the stuff that you think, even with all the junk that you have inside or dealing with, even with all the mistakes you made, He doesn't change his mind about you. John 13:30. We're going to finish with this. See, John had a relationship with Jesus. There's a few people like this in the Bible. But John, he calls himself pretty much God's favorite. Jesus' favorite. The beloved one. He knew it. He said it. He acted like it. And he surely received that same treat, his confidence. 13, verse 13. It says, do you understand? You've called me your teacher and Lord. And you're right, for that's who I am, right? His teacher and Lord. You see two more identities right here with his disciples. He was their teacher. He was their Lord. They were his students, his servants. It says, and you're right, that's who I am. So Jesus is not saying, I am not that. Jesus is not saying, I'm not your Lord anymore, or I'm not your teacher anymore. Like, he's not denying that. He's adding to it, okay? And it says, verse 14, it says, so if I'm your teacher and Lord and have just washed your dirty feet, then you should follow the example that I have set for you and wash another's dirty feet. Now do for each other what I have just done for you. I speak to you timeless truth. A servant is not superior to his master, and an apostle is never greater than one who sent them. So now put into practice what I have done for you, and you will experience a life of happiness enriched with untold blessings. So Jesus just told them a truth. And this is just something quick to get here. He says, put into practice what I've taught you. If you don't put into practice what you receive from God here or during the week or in your time with Him, then you will not experience a life of happiness enriched with untold blessings. To experience a life of happiness enriched with untold blessings, you need to put into practice what Jesus has told you. Verse 18 says, I'm actually going to skip here to well, let's just read this thing. It says, verse 19, I'm telling you this now before it happens, so that when the prophecy comes to pass, you will be convinced that I am. Listen to this timeless truth. Whoever receives the messenger I send receives me, and the one who receives me receives the Father who sent me. Then Jesus was moved deeply in his spirit. Looking at his disciples, he announced, I tell you the truth, one of you is about to betray me. Okay? Now they're all looking at each other. The disciples puzzled over which one of them could do such a thing. The disciple that Jesus dearly loved. Okay? This is what I wanted to get to. Who's the disciple that Jesus dearly loved? John, right? Like, it's awesome. He just said, the disciple who Jesus dearly loved, as you all should already know who that is me, right? And it says, he was at the right of him at the table and was leaning his head on Jesus. Okay, like he was really close to Jesus. He was leaning his head on Jesus, okay? And it says, Peter gestured to his disciple to ask Jesus who it was he referring to. So Peter, check this out. Funny thing about Peter. Peter knew that he wasn't the favorite. He acted like it. So he went over to the one who was the disciple loved by Jesus, John, see? And he's like, hey, ask him who it is. Who's going to betray him, right? Peter gestured to this disciple and asked him to ask Jesus who he was referring to. Then the dearly loved disciple leaned into Jesus and whispered, Master, who is it? And Jesus tells him, he's like, the one I give this piece of bread to after I've dipped it in the bowl, right? And he gives it to Judas, right? So out of a close relationship of intimacy, he received revelation that nobody else did. How do we receive, this revelation? How do we receive the secrets of God? The Bible talks about He has hidden things, secrets, and mysteries that He wants to share with us. How do we receive them? There's only one way, and it's by being close to Him, right? Now, let me tell you something. Jesus meant for all 12 of them to be His favorite, to be the beloved ones, but only one acted like it. Only one received the invitation. The invitation is for all of us. The invitation is for all of us to be as close as John was. But only those that take the invitation, only those that come in, only those that... See, why do you think you know somebody better than someone else? You know, like let's say your dad. Let's say that between your siblings, you're the one who knows your dad the most, and you're the closest to him, and you could say like you're actually friends with your dad now. Why would you be able to say that? Because you probably spent most time with him or talking with him, right? But don't all the other kids have the same access to it? Don't all of them have the same opportunity to get close to him? But why only some of them are closer than others? Why only some of them know some things that others don't? Because they're the ones putting in the time, investing the time in the relationship and being close to him. So it's not, see, because we've gotten this idea that some people are more special than others, that some preachers or some traveling ministers are more special than other people, and they actually are God's favorite. And we're not. Because they know all this stuff and they have all this wisdom and all this anointing. Let me tell you something. It's not because they're the favorite and you're not. It's because they're the favorite. They know it. They act like it. They talk like it. And they are around him more than you are. Right? They're around him more than you are. That's the only reason they know more. That's the only reason they are experiencing more of it than you are. But it's not because they're a favorite and you're not. It's because they're favorite, but you're favorite too. So don't act like an older brother that's like, oh, how come they have all the good stuff and I don't have all the good stuff? Well, it's because they act like it and they're close and they come to me and I actually see them every morning. I haven't seen them in like a month, but I would love it if you come by. You understand this? You are God's favorite. You're unique. He loves and celebrates you. And the only reason you're not experiencing everything that others are is because you're not coming. And I'm not talking about coming to church. Yeah, come to church, but I'm like every day.